2019 was just a start.
Behind the back pass, and they score! Oh my God, what the hell was that?
Nice speed, boy.
Gets topside, Rambo scores!
Pick it up, pick it up, pick it up, pick it up.
Continuation includes addition.
The PLL is expanding to a 7th lacrosse club.
Another franchise means a new beginning for select players.
Schneider buries the winner! And it's Salcido. He scores!
Which ones will be wearing purple this summer?
Romar Dennis! Look out!
Time for the PLL expansion draft to let us know. Welcome inside our NBC Sports studios and to the beginning of the Premier Lacrosse League's second season. Season number 1 ended back in September with the Whip Snakes on top of the 6-team league. Whoever earns this seed this coming fall will be the champion of a 7-team league. The Waterdogs are the PLL's newest team. They already have very cool colors and, as you can see, a pretty awesome logo. They also have a head coach who's with us here today, but they don't have a roster. That will change today. For 18 players, every game will become a revenge game after they are selected in this expansion draft. And here's how it will work. The 6 current PLL teams were allowed to protect 10 players from their roster plus 1 goalie. Those left unprotected are now available to be drafted by Waterdogs head coach Andy Copeland. He has the option of picking up to 4 players from each team. Once 4 players from any given team are selected, their previously unprotected players will be returned to their original team. And just like that, to my right, the newest head coach in the PLL of the Waterdogs, Andy Copeland. Andy, very much looking forward to working with you, talking with you on the sidelines throughout the spring and summer, and maybe even the early fall. Let's go back to January 12th, when the unprotected rosters were released by the PLL. What was your first reaction?
Yeah, well, first of all, the feeling's mutual, Paul, so thanks very much for that introduction. I guess it really was the first time that things felt official. Up until that point, it was all speculation. I had my spreadsheet of what I thought could materialize. And that's when it was official. So you're looking at this pool of players, obviously some real talent that was available to us.
Yeah.
And then just coming up with a strategy with my staff about how we wanted to approach this thing. But we feel like after plenty of phone calls and a lot of due diligence, we're thrilled with the 18 guys that we came up with that we're going to unveil today.
And this question really applies to any coach or GM picking in any sport. Did you value more the system that you know you want to run or the individual talent that you saw on that paper when making your selections?
Yeah, sure. I think it's a combination of both. I mean, I think with certain guys it was probably best available, but then we have an idea and just a philosophy about how we want to approach this thing that may be a little bit different from how some of the teams played last year. So that was certainly something that we considered as well, with the understanding that there still is an entry draft, there still is a college draft, and we're certainly going to have more spots to fill. But we feel like we're at a good start right now.
Any official draft has an analyst. We're very lucky to have our in-game analyst for the PLL on those weekends, Ryan Boyle. Ryan, great to see you.
Seeing you as well.
It's been a long winter without you.
Yeah.
Yeah. So same question that I asked Andy. Your reaction the first time you saw the unprotected list?
I think the first thing that jumps out is talent. You know, I expect this team to be competitive from day one, and from there's some pretty big names that are kind of out there. So you ask 5 different people, and they probably go in 5 different directions. So I'm sure we'll hear about it via social media, how many picks that Andy and I got right and wrong.
Yeah.
But I think the biggest takeaway is this team has the opportunity to be competitive from the very first game.
Who are the no-brainers, the ones that you know these names will be called?
Yeah, I think you look at talent, leadership, and winning, and 5 names just kind of jump off the page. Brody Merrill, a legend within the sport. Drew Schneider, Ben Reeves, Connor Kelly, and Kieran McCardle. Those 5 to me, when I just looked at the kind of grand scheme of things, those to me were absolute no-brainers.
I wouldn't be surprised if all of one of those is the first pick. It's that time. All right, Andy, first pick. Who's the guy at the top of the list?
Yeah, sure. Well, with the first pick of the expansion draft, the Waterdogs are going to take Connor Kelly.
Connor Kelly. Okay, now he was a 2-time All-American at Maryland, a two-Wharton finalist. Limited role with the Whip Snakes, though.
Yeah, I just think he can do so much. He can play below goal line. He can play in front of the cage. He has that deceptive first step. He was a Wharton finalist when he was at Maryland. He can stretch the field. I think he gives you a real viable option behind the arc. Really high IQ, and he he grew up in Fairfield County. I've known of him and interacted with him for a long time right now, so I feel very comfortable with this pick.
Yeah, wondering about that as well. You coached at Fairfield for many years. He grew up in Easton, Connecticut, about a 20-minute drive. So When was the first time you remember interacting with or getting to know him?
He used to work some of our camps during the summer when he was a little rugrat and trying to just give back to the lacrosse community. But he's a great kid, great family, and we're excited to have him and be able to build with him and build around him.
All right, Ryan. Connor Kelly, first pick. What do you think?
I think it's a fantastic pick. You know, you've got a ton of versatility and flexibility immediately from an offensive perspective. So this is a guy that can play attack, can play midfield, has demonstrated the ability to play both at a very high level. And from an initiation perspective, almost an equal split in terms of dodging from X and dodging from up top. So right off the bat, you're able to kind of slot him in a lot of different systems. He brings just so much to the table.
It's good to have versatility. It's also nice to have a home where you know you're best. Attack or midi, which one would you like to see?
I think to see how the rest of this draft plays out. And on top of that, you've also got the entry draft. Right. And you've also got the collegiate draft. And so that's why I think this is a really smart first selection, because he can play in a lot of different systems, a lot of different roles. He just brings so much to the table in terms of his dodging ability, his finishing ability, his ability to distribute the ball, hockey assists. There's so much in terms of skill, and this guy's a winner. You know, he wins in the college game, he wins in the professional leagues. There's a reason why he was a no-brainer and kind of one of my top 5.
All right, Connor Kelly from Maryland, and also with the Whip Snakes, you're one of the PLL, the first overall pick. From here on out, we're going to be making picks in bunches or groups, and right now we'll go 2 through 5. So, Coach, you have Connor Kelly. Who are you taking it to?
Yeah, sure. At number 2, we're going to take Christian Cuccinelli, which gives us another kind of attack/midi hybrid. I think he's a matchup nightmare. Big, strong, two-handed, played for Coach Corrado at Villanova. I had the privilege, or not so privileged, to coach against him, but I've been really impressed with him. He's uber competitive. He's a physical dodger. He's really good with people kind of draped all over him. High IQ guy. Feel really good about Christian.
And familiarity having a lot to do with who you took at 1, and also at number 2, no surprise. How about 3?
3, we picked Brody Merrill. So he was in Ryan's top 5, and rightfully so. I mean, he's on the Mount Rushmore of lacrosse greats. He's spectacular, and I think he gives us that necessary experience. Great locker room guy, great leader, obviously great lacrosse player. He's really taking care of himself playing at this stage of his career. But I'm thrilled to have the opportunity to kind of work alongside and coach Brody. I'm gonna learn more from Brody than I can probably ever give to him. But I'm fired up to be in the same locker room as him.
At age 38, does that mean you're not the oldest guy on the team?
Probably. Yeah, probably.
Because you are?
I'm also 38.
Okay.
I'm also 38. We're getting there.
You guys will have a lot to talk about.
About a year and a half away. I know. Counting down the days. But no, feel awesome about Brody. I mean, I know that's the question of him, is how many years does he have left? But I had a wonderful conversation with him. He has a young family at home, so he's kind of taking it season by season. So we feel really good about Brody.
And at 4?
At 4, former Fairfield Stag goalie Charlie Cipriano. So I had the privilege of coaching Charlie during his collegiate career. I know how this kid is wired. I know how he thinks, how important his professional lacrosse is to him. I think Charlie is a winner. He's a great locker room guy, uber competitive, and I think Charlie's a starter in this league.
For those who are wondering about Jack Kelly, and maybe he was the best available goalie, how do you respond to that?
Yeah, Jack is terrific. There's no doubt about it. I mean, you can argue before the ACL injury, he was one of, if not the best goalie in the world. So I spoke with Jack. We actually just texted very recently. I think the world of him, and honestly, there's nobody in the lacrosse world who's not rooting for him and rooting for a guy like Jackson Place, who we share the same alma mater in Bucknell. And there's nobody in the lacrosse community who's not rooting for those guys to get fully healthy and cleared medically. But I didn't want to come out of this expansion draft today doing the whole I don't know thing. Sure. And there was just a little bit of uncertainty there, and I feel really good about Charlie. And I understand if it's somebody else in this situation who maybe doesn't know Charlie as well as I do, maybe you're looking differently at that position. But I'm a buyer of Charlie Cipriano. I think people are gonna recognize that this summer.
Bringing us to number 5.
Sure. At number 5, we take Ben Reeves out of Yale, who was a Thornton winner from a couple years ago. And again, I know it's kind of a broken record, but one of these attack midi kind of hybrid guys who can play below goal line or in front of the cage. Really athletic, lefty, stretch shooter, high IQ. He's a Yale guy, so he's a bright guy, has good instincts and intuition, kind of understands offensive flow and offensive systems. And I think opponents trying to defend some of those guys that we talked about thus far could have a hard time. It's a little bit of a pick your poison type situation.
Interesting prospect in the sense that he's also very serious about medical school. What kind of conversations did you have with him about the balance between what he's doing there and playing for you?
Yeah, sure. Again, it's just a very honest and transparent conversation. I mean, we'd heard all those grumblings kind of going into draft time, and I've known Ben we're both Section 5 guys out of Rochester, New York, so I've known Ben for a long time and competed against him, been very, very impressed with just everything that he's all about. So he has assured us that he's all into the PLL here, at least for the short term. I don't know that he has a 12-year professional career, as he obviously has some other stuff going on. But I also think the juice is worth the squeeze here. He's a special one.
All right, Andy, thank you. Ryan, selections 2 through 5. What comes to mind?
I think let's just start with the latest one, Ben Reeves, and to borrow maybe an NBA kind of analogy. This is a guy that I just think needs his own team. You look at them, or excuse me, look at Ben last year with the Whip Snakes. He and Matt Rambo kind of occupying a lot of the same area on the field. There just wasn't enough space for the two of them to coexist. Hence the push for him to midfield. I mean, other coaches, Paul, joked, like, you have a Twarton winner, attackman coming out of the box. Like, are you serious? So he just brings so much to the table in terms of that versatility that we talked about. He's only one of 5 players to score from X, the left wing, and up top. So more flexibility, more versatility for the Waterdogs offensively. And you've got a Twarton winner and another national champion kind of on your roster.
Building a defense around 38-year-old Brody Merrill. What do you think?
I polled every one of the other coaches, and to a man, they were like, yeah, I'd take Brody. And this is really going to sting, for Coach Towers. I think fortunately for him, he's got Johnny Surdick to kind of insert in the starting lineup. But, other coaches were joking, like, I don't care if he dresses. I'd have my assistant coach.
Right.
So I think this is instant credibility, instant respect. You've got your culture. You've got your locker room. And then we talk about his leadership. In terms of statistically, this is a top half defense, and opponents shot 28% in terms of their assisted shots. That was very best in the PLL. And that speaks to Brody's ability to organize a defense off ball. That's what he brings to the table. That's what that kind of elder statesman, that organization, that leadership, that's the tangible effects on the field.
All right, so far, Andy, you've gone to chaos twice for defense, if you include the goalie there, and Cipriano, and also twice to the whips for offense, bringing us to pick number 6.
Yeah, well, pick number 6, we're going to go back to the chaos. We're going to take Kyle McClancy. So feel really good about him just athletically. I mean, I know Coach Towers played him in kind of a defensive midi role. And I totally get it. I mean, his first midfield was completely loaded there, so asked him just to do the half-field defense and then use his speed and athleticism to try to create a little bit of transition, which those guys early on in the season last year did better than anybody. So Kyle is a lockdown defenseman. He also, if you look at his Albany career, he had 125 points. So, I think he can do much more than just kind of play that defensive transition type role, and we may ask that of him. But I love his personality, just an understated guy who's a total winner.
Half of your picks right now from the chaos. Have you called Andy Towers to thank him?
Yeah, I mean, I was trying to get an exemption from the league, try to expand that cap at 4. I would have taken 10 if we could, but no, he's done a great job there. He's still got a lot of talent coming back, so we're not going to feel bad for Towers.
All right, we're up to 7.
Yeah, sure. With pick number 7, we're taking Kieran McCardle, who's an attackman from the Atlas squad. He's a guy I think really highly of. Obviously followed his college career at St. John's and what he's done professionally and at the NLL, and he's an old school, like, tough Long Island guy is how I describe him. But he can get to the rack. He's really athletic, just kind of like an effortless runner. I think he has exceptional vision. And when you kind of pair him with maybe a couple off-ball minded middies that we'll be selecting here in a little bit, I feel like there could be some instant cohesion there.
And that brings us to number 8.
With pick number 8, we're taking Brian Carolounis. He's a Villanova guy. I'm pretty friendly with Mike Corrado down there, and Coach Corrado still calls Brian the best player ever to play at Villanova. So that's obviously high praise from a guy who's been around a long time. And I spoke with Brian for 20 minutes on the phone, and it's a couple upstate New York guys talking and kind of connecting, and I love everything that he's all about, just as a high motor, super competitive guy who wants to be doing this for another 10 years. And I really feel good about Brian. I think he hasn't lost a step, and he can create some havoc in the middle of the field. He's got an exceptional stick, and he's another one of these kind of seasoned, experienced defensemen that I think can be really valuable systematically.
All right, Andy. Pretty good variety there.
Yeah.
Like 6 through 8, midi, attack, and also D.
I think you look at McClancy, he led all short stick defensive midfielders in assists last year. So what now in this two-way role with the Waterdogs? What does that unlock for him offensively? And Coach Copeland, spoke about his career at Albany. you start to now see exactly kind of the method behind the madness in some of these picks. That's a two-way guy, can get up and down, go from defense to offense, and then you've got your kind of pure offensive guys that are kind of attack midfield, that versatility. The pick for me that jumps out here is BK Carolunas. I had him 8th as well, so in terms of overall ranking, and he gets selected in that slot. This is a real veteran. This is a real pro. This is somebody that's going to cause a lot of havoc, can really shut down the other team's top midfielder. He's a real stalwart defensively, so love that pick.
Getting to the halfway point here. Selection number 9, Coach. What are you thinking?
Yeah, sure. With pick number 9, we're taking Ben Mcintosh, and Ben is exactly who I was just referencing with some of these off-ball midfielders. I think he's exceptional in that role. Probably him and the guy Kevin Buchanan, who's another chaos guy. And I think I would be surprised if McArdle and Mcintosh didn't develop a similar chemistry to what you saw, Tom Schreiber and Mcintosh have last year. So we were impressed and excited about some of the attackmen that we were able to gobble up here. And I think, because we'll probably have a little bit of that presence below goal line, we didn't need all dodging offensive players. You needed to go ahead and complement yourself with some off-ball guys who just are really high IQ guys and don't play with an ego and are willing to throw singles and move and work away from it. And I think Ben fits that to a T.
Looking at my list here, you talk about a lot of the attackmen available out there and the talent. Some pretty good ones still on the list as we're now up to number 10.
No doubt about that. Number 10, we're going to select Drew Schneider, who is first of all, he's one of my all-time favorite people. I actually recruited Drew when I was an assistant coach down in Maryland. So I've known Drew and the Schneider family for a long time right now. And Drew just makes every locker room that he's in better. And you see the number of championships that he's won at the professional level and the number of championship games that he's competed in. He's a guy who's just a cool cucumber in those big moments. And we all understand there's going to be a lot of one-goal games and overtime games. And who are the guys as a coach that you can really depend on in crunch time? Drew certainly fits that for me.
Other whip snakes still available here as we get to 11.
Yeah, number 11, we're going to go with Ryan Renner, who is a great attackman. It's been fun for me because I competed against him when he was at Towson, and the role that he played at Towson versus kind of how he's evolved professionally is a little bit different. But I think that speaks to his versatility and his IQ. And again, you can move him around within the framework of your offense. And last year when he was playing alongside Rambo, they kind of moved him in front of the cage. He played a little bit more of an off-ball role, but I think he's also a two-handed dodger who can get to the rack and who can really put some pressure on defenses off the dodge. So we feel really good about Ryan. He loves lacrosse. He loves competing. You see the number of kind of game-winning goals that he had last year. That's not random.
Only 11 selections in. You're already through your whip snakes allotment. That's 4 whips. So as we get to 12, it's going to have to be from another team.
Yeah, we're going to move away from the whip snakes. They'll be off the hook here. But with number 12, we're going to go pick Noah Richard from the Atlas. And totally understand them taking and protecting Kyle Hartzell. He's obviously a special player. I think Noah has the ability to be a real special player. He's a good-sized, good-looking athlete, great runner, great stick, tough guy, super competitive. Played at Marquette, was recruited by one of my friends, Joe Amplo, who obviously, kind of got that program up and running, and he's now the head coach at Navy. And Joe couldn't give Noah any higher of an endorsement, so really feel good about this one.
It's the first rookie from last year that you have selected. There were a number that are available to you. Bringing us to 13.
Yeah, sure. Well, pick number 13, we're taking Stephen Dinapoli. So really like Steven's game. He's pound for pound, he may be the best athlete in the league, and he's a guy that they had pegged to be onto Team USA in 2018 before his injury. But we feel like he's finally healthy. When I spoke to him, he said this summer he's going to be finally playing without the brace, so kind of open him up a little bit. And I think he is a special short stick D-mid. And if you just look at some of the protected rosters, kind of the premium that some of those coaches put on that D-midi position, it's obviously an important one. And Steven's kind of the one true D-midi that we're taking. He has a lot of experience, he's competitive, and he's a winner.
Yeah, teams didn't leave a lot of D-middies available. It was interesting how well they protected those pretty much through all the teams. Let's take a look at picks 1 through 13 and check in with where we've been. Connor Kelly was the first selection, All-American from Maryland, and also played with the Whip Snakes last year. Defense at 2 and 3, and then it's been mostly offense since then, certainly offensive heavy. And as we talked about a moment ago, no more whips available. 4 have been selected. No player from the Chrome has been picked yet. 5 selections left for Andy. Where would you like to see him go?
I think you got to build some defensive depth here. You got a couple of young ones, Sabia, Cade Van Rappeur's kind of out there. Some Canadian finishers with Berg and Dixon. Which direction you go there potentially. And then you got some young athletic midfielders still on the board, some two-way guys, some offensive guys. Conrad, Romar Dennis, and Max Tuttle are some names that come to mind.
Final 5 decisions for you, Andy. Let's begin at number 14.
Yeah, sure. Number 14, we're going to select Wes Berg, who one of the gentlemen that Ryan just mentioned, total winner, leads Denver to a national championship, and he's done more of the same as a pro. He wants you to get some defenders. At 15, you want to start there? That's funny. No, at number 15, we're going to take Chris Sabia. Competed against him at Penn State. I think he's a number 1 defenseman. He can cover the small, little, undersized, quick guy and the big bully. So he's just versatile, and he gets it done. All right, another rookie selected last year, playing for the first time in 2019. Plenty of good first-year players still out there to take. Yeah, number 16, we're going to gobble up Ryan Conrad. So obviously followed his career leading Virginia to a national championship, and then kind of the limited role that he played a little bit last year. But Swiss Army knife, does it all, really athletic. We'll find a role for him. And 17. At 17, we're going to select Danny Ipe. So Danny is the fastest guy in the league for the All-Star weekend there, where he edged out Brent Adams, who I coached for 4 years at Fairfield, and I know the type of athlete that Brent is. So Danny to be in that category there too, I think he gives us a lot of options. And your final pick at number 18? Yeah, final pick, we're going to take Drew Simoneau. So face-off guy who played and had a wonderful career up at Nazareth, and look, I think he's the real deal. I mean, he's a 44% guy last year, but he's going against the world's best face-off guys, and he was kind of in that secondary role to Connor Farrell. I think Drew, with the spotlight on him, I think is even better than that. Okay, there it is, 1 through 18. Ryan, your first reaction to the Waterdogs roster and how it compares to your knowledge of the rest of the league.
I think my biggest takeaway is, Coach Copeland saying, I want a roster that I can walk away with today. And I think that approach, he kind of nailed in terms of positional breakdown. I think also you just have to have an eye towards the entry draft and the collegiate draft in terms of where you can kind of fill in the blanks and where some talent's coming out. So I think job well done in terms of kind of walking away with that. Me personally, it's really easy from a media member to say this as opposed to the guy that's actually had to coach the team. Maybe a few big swings, for me, maybe Jack Kelly, I think that risk is worth the reward. Maybe ditto with Curtis Dixon, just kind of why not? Let's kind of go for this. And I think league-wide, in terms of face-off guys, I was kind of surprised, after the top 2, I think the rest kind of fall into this kind of big kind of middle chunk, and that was something that I think could have been addressed maybe at the collegiate draft specifically. So those are my kind of major takeaways.
And I know you'll be quite ready for that collegiate draft. We look forward to your calls of all the games throughout the spring, and we'll see you back here for the college draft here in a couple of months. What's next for you, Andy? I mean, you now have 18 players. You've known for a while who those 18 were going to be, but on your checklist as you get ready for the season, what do you have after this draft?
Yeah, sure. I mean, the next is just to make sure that we're prepared for the entry draft. So 2 rounds of the entry draft, and then I think we'll have another 5 picks just to catch us up to the rest of the teams there. So we have to be very strategic there. We know where maybe some of our, I don't want to call them holes, but some of the things that we need to go ahead and continue to work through. And then it's the college draft. It gives us a fun reason to stay connected to the college game and watch those seniors perform this spring. It's a loaded senior class, so a couple more big drafts coming up that we'll make sure we're equally as prepared for.
Yeah, a little detail there as we say goodbye and what's coming up with those drafts. We're very much looking forward to what's coming on March 16th. That is the entry draft and the college draft. It's going to be fun every year. It's going to be especially fun this year. Tremendous talent across the board. You can see that from right here inside this studio. That'll happen on April 21st.